Lee Yoonbi, a high school sophomore, struggles with conflicted feelings about school. She hates attending but feels uneasy skipping. Despite her mixed emotions, she yearns to go. At school, So Young and her friends humiliate Yoonbi with a cruel prank involving eggs, flour, and fish sauce. Laughter erupts as Yoonbi silently endures, forced to spend the day in gym clothes while classmates ridicule her. When her teacher inquires, Yoonbi denies any trouble. Yoonbi, the eldest at Love's House Orphanage, takes on a nurturing role, ensuring the children eat well and addressing their challenges. Upon discovering Rajin's hidden bruise caused by a bully, Yoonbi confronts the boy's dismissive mother and demands an apology. Grateful, Rajin calls her a blessing. Later, Yoonbi receives a thoughtful package from Song Mi-kyung, a mysterious benefactor. The orphanage director speculates, unaware that Yoonbi has a twin, Go Yoon-byul, living in Seoul with Song Mi-kyung, her mother. As Yoon-byul prepares for a school trip to Tongyong, she keeps her connection to Yoonbi hidden, sending gifts under her mother's name. Her composure falters after receiving a cryptic message from Young Soo-in, hinting at a troubling past. This shifts her mood, and she lashes out at concerned friends. Meanwhile, Yoonbi reassures Rajin, promising to stay strong despite her hardships. When her bullies arrive at Love's house under the guise of community service, their hostility resurfaces. So Young mocks Yoonbi, accusing her of living off their parents' taxes, and flaunts her father's influence. Rajin, upset but unnoticed, watches from afar as Yoonbi pretends to take it all in stride. In Tongyong, Yoon-byul, distracted, clutches a news clipping of Love's house featuring Yoonbi's photo. After a mysterious call, she slips away from her group for a tense encounter with a boy. Shijin notices but doesn't understand. At Love's house, Yoonbi cautiously asks So Young about the scholarship. So Young seizes Yoonbi's phone, sending threatening messages in her name. Laughing at Yoonbi's despair, she goes too far, prompting Yoonbi to snap. Grabbing a stick, Yoonbi confronts So Young, who taunts her, daring her to strike under a CCTV camera. A scuffle ensues, and debris collapses, knocking both unconscious. Yoonbi instinctively shields So Young. The next day, Yoon-byul's odd behavior worries her friends. Shijin notices a bruise on her neck, recalling her secretive encounter. Yoon-byul later calls Love's house under a false name, but hesitates to connect with Yoonbi. Later, Yoon-byul isolates herself in a bathroom, startled by approaching footsteps. As the lights dim, she nervously calls out, her fear escalating until a scream pierces the silence. While classmates gather for a photo, Yoonbi passes by unnoticed. The group soon realizes Yoon-byul is missing, sparking a frantic search. Her mother rushes to Tongyong in panic. Yoonbi recovers from the accident, but So Young twists the situation, claiming victimhood. Her influential parents demand Yoonbi's expulsion, and the school complies. On her final day, Yoonbi refuses to apologize, maintaining her innocence. Facing her bullies one last time, she questions So Young's hatred. Despite being overpowered and filmed, Yoonbi stands firm. She escapes and leaves school for good, leaving her name tag behind. Shortly after, a body falls into the water, clad in the twins' matching sweatshirt. On Yoonbi's desk, her carved message remains, "Goodbye, friends." Yoon-byul's mother, addressing the camera, shares that it has been 10 days since her daughter disappeared. She vows to bring Yoon-byul home. Yoonbi stands on a bridge, reflecting on a story from the orphanage about Sarah, a girl comforted by knowing someone cared. As she sinks underwater, a hand pulls her back to safety. In Tongyong, Yoon-byul's mother tirelessly distributes missing posters. At her hotel, surrounded by posters, she tearfully scolds Yoon-byul's smiling photo, pleading for her return. A phone call reignites her hope. At the hospital, she hesitates before approaching what she believes is Yoon-byul's bed, but finds a bruised Yoonbi instead. Relieved, she clasps Yoonbi's hands, thanking the heavens. Yoonbi, waking up, doesn't recognize her mother. The doctor diagnoses amnesia, with uncertain recovery. So Young later visits the hospital, feigning kindness but yanking Yoonbi's hair to help her remember. Her Eom intervenes, asserting Yoonbi as her daughter and threatening police action. So Young retreats, and she takes Yoonbi home. Meanwhile, Yeon broods over his last exchange with Yoon-byul. In a flashback, he offered her his medal, honoring an old promise, only for her to dismiss him coldly, saying they'd grown apart. Back in the present, he wrestles with her harsh words. A heated exchange with his sunbae over his medal and missed event leads to a fight and coach-imposed punishment. At the hospital, Tae-gwang escapes using a makeshift sling, greeting Yun-bi under the assumption she is Yun-byul. His clumsy escape lands him safely. Later, he meets Song-ju, Yun-byul's best friend, who scolds him for not informing her sooner. Song-ju contacts Yeon, who rushes to the hospital, barely acknowledging her. Yeon encounters Yun-bi at the hospital, surprised by her polite thanks after he retrieves her wallet. Her unfamiliar demeanor confuses him, and he follows her, eventually embracing her in relief. Startled, Yun-bi explains her amnesia. Both Yeon and Song-ju are taken aback by her cheerful attitude. Before leaving, Yeon asks her to find him when her memories return. Yun-bi settles into her new home, exploring belongings she assumes are hers. She finds a notebook with an orphanage photo, but is interrupted by Mi-kyung, who shares a family scrapbook. Mi-kyung mentions Yun-byul was adopted, and Yun-bi reflects on the love she must have received. That night, Yun-bi surprises Mi-kyung by asking to stay with her. At school, Tae-gwang, newly discharged, is stunned by Yun-bi's polite greeting. Song-ju and Shi-jin excitedly welcome her back, but her unfamiliar behavior shocks classmates. Her confusion about her seat convinces many of her memory loss. Tae-gwang later has a tense encounter with Du-shik, who corners him in the hallway but refrains from escalating. Yun-bi recognizes Tae-gwang as the boy she saw scaling the hospital wall. Meanwhile, teacher Kim awkwardly attempts to gift a coworker a souvenir, which she politely declines. When Yun-bi visits him with the class president, he remarks that some memories are best left behind, subtly hinting at her past. The vice principal advises Kim to monitor both Yun-bi and Tae-gwang closely, suggesting prior incidents. Yun-bi navigates the school, haunted by whispers of her amnesia and vague memories of gossip from her past. At a parent meeting, Shi-jin's mother questions Yun-byul's place in the elite study group. Yun-byul's mother proposes waiting for exam results, which later reveal Yun-bi, posing as Yun-byul, has topped the class. Applause erupts. Ignoring teacher Kim's warnings, Du-shik organizes a night out, inviting Yun-bi. She said she wanted to get her wallet, but the reference was to Young-eun. The outing ends at a police station after a Noribang dispute. Teacher Kim bails them out, lamenting his empty wallet. Outside, Yun-bi offers Young-eun money, but Young-eun coldly questions her amnesia, suggesting it must be convenient to forget. That night, Yun-bi's mother notices a police car next door. Young-eun's family has accused their maid of theft. The next morning, Yun-bi meets Yeon while biking, discussing her missing memories. Yeon admits to briefly visiting Tongyoung but doesn't elaborate. At school, Yun-bi struggles with her locker, and Tae-gwang dramatically breaks the lock, revealing jewelry inside. It's identified as belonging to Young-eun's mother, sparking rumors of theft. Before accusations spiral, Yeon pulls Yun-bi out of the classroom, leaving everyone stunned. In a flashback, a week after Yun-byul's disappearance, a memorial flower appears on her desk. Song-ju, outraged by her classmates' indifference, crushes it, declaring they've gone too far. After Yeon pulled Yun-bi outside, she demands answers, and he admits acting impulsively because her behavior unsettled him. Reassuring her, he insists she's not capable of stealing, and Yun-bi clings to his belief, asking if she can trust him. Teacher Kim learns from Young-eun that Yun-byul once demanded money, prompting Young-eun to steal her mother's necklace, which later disappeared from her locker. Though the school opts not to pursue the matter, Young-eun's mother pushes for a hearing. During a heated confrontation, Young-eun accuses her mother of feigned concern and walks away, haunted by memories of her friendship with Yun-byul. At Mi-kyung's shop, Yun-bi meets a woman who introduces herself as Soo-in's mother. Mi-kyung's tense reaction raises Yun-bi's suspicions. The next day, Yun-bi jogs with Yeon, discussing her memory gaps. When he notices the wound on her neck, Yun-bi can't recall its origin, unsettling him. As whispers about her amnesia grow, Yun-bi confronts her reflection, imagining Yun-byul smirking back. On the rooftop, she encounters Tae-gwang, who jokes about their friendship before admitting they barely interacted. Meanwhile, Song-ju defends Yoonbi against accusations, recalling her refusal to accept gifts, while Yoonbi debates her fate in the disciplinary hearing. During lunch, Yoonbi notices Yong-eun overhearing classmates mocking her. Song-ju's bold intervention triggers a flashback for Yoonbi of similar bullying she once faced. At home, Yoonbi and Mi-kyung bond over face masks, with Mi-kyung encouraging her to face the hearing bravely. Yong-eun later sneaks into the classroom, but Yoonbi catches her. Searching Yong-eun's locker, she finds her own belongings. Confronting Yong-eun, Yoonbi learns the accusation stemmed from Yong-eun's resentment, rooted in humiliation and loneliness. At the bus stop, Yong-eun recalls Yoon-byul's harsh rejection of her attempts at friendship, leaving her guilt-ridden. At the pool, Yoonbi's playful time with Yeon turns serious when falling into the water triggers sharp memories. Her bullying, despair on the bridge, and Yoon-byul saving her. Overwhelmed, she runs off, but Yeon comforts her. Later, Yoonbi uncovers an old orphanage photo, confirming her identity as Lee Yoonbi. Collapsing in tears, she clings to Mi-kyung in desperation. At the disciplinary hearing, Yoonbi shocks everyone by admitting guilt. She recounts bullying Yong-eun. Her words resonate with Yong-eun, who tearfully admits her loneliness and pain. The hearing ends in compromise. Later, Yong-eun finds a remote-controlled car leading to her locker, where a heartfelt note and pillow await. Yeonbi's message offers reconciliation, leaving Yong-eun overcome with emotion. She returns her credit card to Mi-kyung, announcing plans to transfer schools and start anew. Yoonbi prepares to leave as well, writing a goodbye letter to Mi-kyung, signed as Lee Yoonbi. At school, Young-eun's farewell drawings for her classmates include a hopeful note for Yoonbi. Walking home with Yeon, Yoonbi congratulates him on breaking a record, but wistfully expresses sadness over regaining her memories. She formally bids him goodbye, leaving him behind with tears streaming down her face. Yoonbi discovers letters and diaries left by Yoon-byul, uncovering the truth behind the mysterious gifts she received at the orphanage. Yoon-byul's diary reveals their adoption story. Mi-kyung mistook Yoon-byul for Yoonbi and adopted her. Too frightened to correct the mistake, Yoon-byul carried guilt over knowing her twin's existence. In her final entry, she wonders if she should have confessed. The next morning, Mi-kyung finds a letter from Yoonbi revealing the mistaken identity and thanking her for the memories. Mi-kyung watches helplessly as Yoonbi boards a train to Tongyong. At the hospital, Yoonbi learns a body was recovered near the rescue site. Seeing an urn with her name and a photo from the orphanage, she believes Yoon-byul sacrificed herself to save her. Yeon searches for Yoon-byul, but finds no trace. Meanwhile, Tae-gwang's father dismisses his birthday, assigning a gifts preparation to the housekeeper. At school, teacher Kim asks about Yoon-byul, but the class remains confused. Mi-kyung visits Love's house and learns of Yoonbi's struggles, including her bullying and suicide attempt. Shaken, she finds Yoonbi at the funeral home. Staring at the urn, Yoonbi tearfully explains her sister's sacrifice. Overwhelmed, Mi-kyung collapses, and they grieve together. Mi-kyung plans to return Yoonbi to the orphanage, but can't let her go. Overcome by memories of their bond, she begs Yoonbi to stay, promising to love her as her own. They embrace, crying. Yeon focuses on swim practice, enduring the pain of an old shoulder injury. His determination impresses his coach, but his efforts hint at a deeper struggle to please his father. At school, Yoonbi adjusts to life as Yoon-byul, but slips occasionally, raising suspicions. Yeon tests her with unexpected texts and surprises, but she maintains her facade. In the nurse's office, Tae-gwang jokes with Yoonbi, and she suggests they start fresh, introducing herself as Yoon-byul. Tae-gwang laughs and shares his own secret, revealing a photo of his actress mother, Song Hee-young. Teacher Kim confronts director Gong about a past incident, refusing his offer to cover car repairs. Their tense exchange hints at unresolved history. Later, both teacher Kim and Yoonbi receive cryptic texts from Young Soo-in about good memories. When Yoonbi asks about it, teacher Kim evades the question. In class, gossip about Tae-gwang's mother and her rumored past with director Gong leads to a fight. Tae-gwang attacks Ki-tae after a mocking comment, escalating until Yeon intervenes, shielding Eunbi. Afterward, Tae-gwang notices Eunbi's injury, but hesitates moments when Yeon blocks him. Yunbi brushes it off, though a conversation with friends reminds her of Yeon's suspicious detour to Tongyong. Confronting him, she receives a vague denial. At home, Tae-gwang's father dismisses his birthday request, leading to a heated argument. After being slapped, Tae-gwang storms out, riding his scooter recklessly through the city. Meanwhile, Yeon debates, revealing the truth to Eunbi but hesitates. Yunbi, out walking, encounters Tae-gwang on a bridge. He dismisses her concern with sarcasm, but reveals his loneliness and pain as she turns to leave. Her softened reaction leads to a moment of connection, and they laugh as he teaches her to ride his scooter. Yeon arrives, medal in hand, but stops upon seeing them together, his expression heavy with resignation. The next morning, teacher Kim announces a transfer student, Kang So-young. Yunbi freezes as her former bully confidently introduces herself. Their eyes meet, and the tension of their shared past hangs in the air. Yeon reflects on the pressure of being called a swimming prodigy, crediting his success to relentless effort rather than innate talent. He shares a quiet moment, mentioning someone special, hinting at Yunbyul. Later, he leaves a medal intended for Yunbi on a bridge after seeing her with Tae-gwang. Yunbi finds the medal, recalling their childhood memories with a soft smile. The arrival of So-young, Yunbi's former bully, unsettles her. So-young's veiled jabs and efforts to probe Yunbi's relationships heighten the tension. During a break, she corners Yunbi in the bathroom, mixing apologies with subtle taunts, leaving Yunbi uneasy. Tae-gwang faces his father's pressure to study abroad, but dismisses it, preoccupied with thoughts of Yunbi that bring him small joys. Meanwhile, Yunbi's search for answers about her past uncovers distressing details about her bullying and cryptic messages, leaving her with more questions than clarity. At lunch, So-young's presence creates unease, while Tae-gwang and Yi-an vie for Yunbi's attention, adding to the tension. So-young observes Yunbi closely and attempts to take a secret photo, only to be caught by Tae-gwang, further fueling Yunbi's suspicions about her intentions. Teacher Kim questions Tae-gwang about his plans, but he remains indifferent, signing withdrawal forms without concern. Yi-an, focused on swimming, turns down an advertisement offer. He hesitates to approach Eunbi after practice, but she invites him for food. Over ramen, Yi-an shares the story behind the medal, revealing his deep feelings for Eunbyul. Yunbi reflects on his pain, but declines his offer to help recover her memories. At home, Yunbi looks at the medal and whispers to Yunbyul's photo, acknowledging Yeon's feelings for her sister. Later, So-young pieces together that Yunbi and Yunbyul are twins after seeing a missing person ad. She attempts reconciliation, but Yunbi dismisses her, prompting whispers that Yunbyul's old personality might be returning. Yunbi learns from a classmate that Jung Soo-in is dead, leaving her shocked. Searching Yunbyul's belongings, she finds a library card that leads to a book containing eerie letters and a message describing a lonely friendship. The discovery deeply unsettles her. Song-ju and Shi-jin speculate about Yunbi's distant behavior, while Tae-gwang playfully takes her backpack, revealing his growing affection. Shi-jin faces harsh criticism from her mother after expressing a desire to quit tutoring, leading to an emotional breakdown. Her mother suggests a shift to art, but Shi-jin, overwhelmed, storms away in tears. Yi-an hides a shoulder injury despite warnings it could jeopardize his swimming career. Yunbi later reads Yunbyul's letters, learning about a stalker who knew intimate details about her sister, amplifying her unease. That evening, she asks Yi-an for help regaining her memories, and they make a pinky promise. Meanwhile, Tae-gwang jokingly pretends to dangle her backpack over a river, but eventually falls asleep with it, prompting Yi-an to retrieve it, their rivalry quietly simmering. Yunbi panics after calling Love's house when Ra-jin recognizes her voice, but Mi-kyung comforts her. Yunbi avoids discussing Yunbyul's diary, instead focusing on exam stress. At school, tension grows between Tae-gwang and Yi-an as they subtly clash. Mi-kyung confronts Min-jun's mother, demanding Yunbi be removed from study groups to prioritize her well-being despite criticism. Later, So-young corners Yunbi, bringing up Yunbi's supposed memory loss and a bullied girl from Tongyong who died. Flashbacks reveal So-young's past cruelty, and their confrontation ends with So-young smirking, recalling Yunbi's earlier words about pity. Tae-gwang dismisses an interview as boring, claiming he only cares about finding amusement. On the rooftop, he overhears So-young accusing Eunbi of being her real identity. So-young's confrontation turns physical until Tae-gwang intervenes, stopping her. Eunbi, eerily calm, acknowledges her newfound knowledge of her twins' tragic bullying and leaves So-young shaken. Later, Eunbi collapses in the stairwell, unnoticed by Tae-gwang, who watches from afar. In the cafeteria, So-young nervously asks Tae-gwang to keep quiet about the rooftop incident. He sarcastically agrees, but warns her that Eunbi is untouchable at school. So-young, determined, contacts an accomplice in Tongyong to obtain a handwriting sample to confirm Eunbi's identity. Songju receives exciting news about landing a commercial during class, while teacher Kim humorously redirects her enthusiasm into solving a math problem. After school, Eunbi confronts Tae-gwang about following her. Flustered, he admits he's worried about her, but plays it off as a joke. At home, Yeon learns about his father's financial struggles and accepts a commercial offer to help. Later, he meets Eunbi at the library and reassures her that no one harassed her before Tongyong, though he confirms her neck injury was from earlier. They visit a childhood soccer field, reminiscing and playing before Yeon promises to help her recover her memories. The next morning, Minjun prepares for school under his mother's stifling pride, with their house quiet to avoid distracting him. Meanwhile, So-young confirms Eunbi's handwriting matches the orphanage sample. Hiding her findings, Tae-gwang cryptically teases Eunbi in the hallway, positioning himself protectively when So-young appears, muttering that one lunatic is enough to keep another at bay. During her commercial shoot, Songju is relegated to the background and criticized by the director. At school, So-young corners Eunbi, feigning reconciliation before threatening her again. Tae-gwang intervenes, daring So-young to confess her bullying if Eunbi reveals her twin's identity. Intimidated but unshaken, So-young retreats, leaving Eunbi relieved with Tae-gwang by her side. Songju shares lunch with Yeon, who encourages her with analogies to his swimming struggles. Buoyed by his words, Songju jokes about his acting skills, their banter easing her mood. On their way home, Tae-gwang shields Eunbi from Yeon's inquiries, deflecting him curtly. The next day, So-young's prosecutor father visits the school, unsettling Eunbi and her friends. A seat shuffle places Tae-gwang next to Yeon, intensifying their rivalry. Their clashes escalate during gym class, drawing teasing comparisons to a love-hate dynamic. The school buzzes about Yeon and Songju's ad, but Songju's minor role invites mockery. Embarrassed, she runs off, brushing aside comfort from Eunbi and Shijin. So-young feigns support, suggesting connections to an entertainment director, which intrigues Songju. Meeting Eunbi and Shijin later, Songju claims she's over her sadness, but tensions rise when Yeon and So-young join them, prompting Eunbi to leave. Outside, Yeon confronts her secrecy about So-young, but Eunbi refuses to explain, straining their relationship. The next day, Eunbi sees Songju with So-young, who has arranged an audition. When Eunbi warns Songju, she accuses her of being controlling. So-young smirks at the fallout, but Eunbi warns her not to hurt Songju. Eunbi isolates herself, and teacher Kim notices her resemblance to a troubled former student. Tae-gwang finds her and offers quiet support, jokingly asking her to keep his soft side a secret. Later, Tae-gwang defiantly rips up his withdrawal form in his father's office, declaring his intent to stay at school. An article exposing So-young's past bullying spreads, leading to silent confrontation from classmates. Songju hesitantly questions So-young, who doesn't deny the accusations. So-young confronts Tae-gwang, accusing him of leaking the story and threatening retaliation with handwriting evidence. Determined to protect Eunbi, Tae-gwang pulls her out of school and onto a bus. Yeon chases after them but is left behind. On board, Tae-gwang quietly asks to be the one person who calls Eunbi by her real name, leaving her stunned by his sincerity. The next day, So-young manipulates the narrative, claiming that Tongyong bullying rumors are false. Protecting her secret for now, Tae-gwang encourages Eunbi to embrace her identity as Go Eunbyul, warning her about So-young's investigation. Later, Eunbi seeks comfort at her mother's shop, but is unsettled by a tense visit from Soo-in's mother. At school, Yeon and Tae-gwang trade barbs over their absences, while Yeon and Eunbi silently long for reconciliation. Their tension eases when Yeon helps her with a broken bike, hinting at a truce. Determined, Eunbi adopts her sister's bold demeanor. At school, she confidently confronts So-young, reminding her that her actions won't go unchallenged. Though Yunbi maintains her composure during the confrontation, she briefly breaks down afterward, unseen by all except Tae-gwang, who watches from a distance. At home, So-young presents handwriting evidence to her father, suggesting a connection between Eunbi and her sister. He dismisses her concerns, destroying the sample, but later revisits the evidence in private. Meanwhile, Min-jun faces his mother's relentless pressure after missing the top math score, his frustration simmering as he hides his anger. On the school bus, Kaitae's fare is covered by a woman whom he boldly flirts with, asking for her number. Later, the mommy mafia meets, with So-young's mother flaunting her daughter's achievements. Min-jun's mother remains skeptical of So-young joining their study group, but masks her competitive edge. In class, a brochure project about Tong-yong pairs Yeon, Tae-gwang, and Ki-tae in a hilariously dysfunctional group. They joke about outsourcing the work while tensions rise between Yeon and Tae-gwang as they argue over Yoonbyul's well-being. Meanwhile, Yoonbi's group reviews Tong-yong photos, and she spots herself in the background as Lee Yoonbi. Investigating further, she tracks a mysterious number from her call history, reaching Min-ju, a Tong-yong classmate who immediately recognizes her. Yoonbi meets Min-ju, who recounts a confrontation during their Tong-yong trip. In a flashback, Min-ju accuses Yoonbyul of impersonating Soo-in and demands her phone, resulting in a struggle that causes Yoonbyul to fall and injure her neck. Tearfully, Yoonbyul confesses she received texts from Soo-in and feels guilt toward her. Overwhelmed, Min-ju dismisses her claims, calling her crazy for believing a dead girl could send messages. In the present, Yoonbi asks about Soo-in's death, but Min-ju knows little, only recalling that her death was announced a day before. Min-ju mentions Yoonbyul didn't seem to like Soo-in, adding to Yoonbi's confusion. At home, Yoonbi reflects on the note addressed to Yoonbyul, its meaning now heavier. She seeks comfort from her mother, who quietly shuts an old photo album and lets Yoonbi rest her head on her shoulder. At school, teacher Jung Min-young arrives in stylish attire, amusing students and embarrassing Ki-tae, who recognizes her as the woman he awkwardly flirted with on the bus. Later, he nervously asks her to forget their encounter, but she misinterprets his request as a call for support and reassures him warmly. Yoonbi shares her inner conflict with Tae-gwang, revealing her fear of confiding in Yeon despite wanting to. Tae-gwang advises her to do nothing for now. Meanwhile, So-young's father spots Yoonbi at school and begins piecing together her connection to Tong-yong and the hearing where she declared her innocence. Yoonbi, dressed as Yoonbyul, texts Yeon, unaware he's waiting outside her house. Rushing to meet her, Yeon pretends to finish practice casually. Over kimbap, he surprises her by removing carrots, recalling her preferences with uncanny accuracy. Yoonbi marvels at how well he knows her and nervously asks if they're still close. Despite her changes, Yeon jokes about liking the new Yoonbyul, but admits his mixed feelings. The pair laugh and bond at an arcade before visiting a pond to skip stones. Yeon notices a scar on her arm when she stumbles, and her vague explanation doesn't match his memory. Her slip about learning to ride a bike at 10 triggers Yeon's suspicion. Yoonbi accidentally reveals her scar came from learning to ride a bike at 10, leaving Yeon confused since he remembers teaching her in middle school. Suspicions about her identity grow as her cryptic remarks resurface. When he asks directly if she's Go Yoonbyul, her stunned silence confirms his fears. Nervously, Yeon laughs it off, attributing his doubts to her recent changes. That night, he lies awake, haunted by unanswered questions, while Yoonbi confides in her mother about feeling guilty despite finally finding happiness. Mi-kyung suggests transferring schools, but Yoonbi doesn't respond. The next morning, Tae-gwang surprises his chauffeur by taking the bus, hoping to see Yoonbi. However, Yeon finds her first and awkwardly invites her to a movie. Tae-gwang arrives in time to insert himself into the plans, escalating tensions. When a speeding motorcycle nearly hits her, both boys instinctively act, but Yeon pulls her to safety first, leaving Tae-gwang visibly annoyed. At lunch, Yoonbi joins her friends, despite So-young's presence, and inquires about Songju's audition. Meanwhile, So-young stages a fake audition, asking her uncle to humor Songju before rejecting her. Overhearing this, Yoonbi confronts So-young, demanding she cancel the plan. So-young refuses and subtly hints to Yeon that Yoonbi resembles Lee Yoonbi. Though unsettled, Yeon remains in denial. Later, Yoonbi's notebook goes missing, and she hesitantly asks the class about it. So-young feigns illness to avoid suspicion, while her father confirms Yoonbi's handwriting is nearly identical to Lee Yoonbi's. Tensions rise as Yoonbi struggles to mediate between her friends, but Songju misinterprets her concerns as attacks on So-young. Tae-gwang notices Yoonbi's dejection and snaps a photo of her sulking face to cheer her up. She admits she enjoys not having to put up a front around him, and they share a rare, lighthearted moment. Yoonbi went to the cinema with Yeon and encountered Tae-gwang when they come back. Yeon made Yoonbi get into the bus while he stayed behind to threaten Tae-gwang. So-young's scheming unravels when group projects are mysteriously erased from computers. CCTV footage shows her returning to the classroom, and Yoonbi's missing notebook is found in her bag, further implicating her. Classmates accuse her of sabotage, and even Songju cannot defend her. Though So-young denies tampering with the computers, her claims are dismissed as Yoonbi and Tae-gwang witness her public disgrace. Yoonbi confronts So-young, pointing out being unfairly blamed, a situation So-young had inflicted on others. So-young denies responsibility, but internally vows revenge. Teacher Kim and Teacher Min-young confirm technical failures caused the computer issues, but the stress takes a toll, with Kim receiving another eerie text that leaves him uneasy. Yoonbi also receives a similar message, heightening her discomfort. At home, So-young's father leaves handwriting evidence confirming Yoonbi's identity. Armed with this proof, So-young confronts Yoonbi, attempting to intimidate her. Yoonbi, however, defiantly vows to expose So-young's past before leaving the school. Frustrated, So-young retaliates by sending Yeon photos of Yoonbi's orphanage records and ID, revealing her true identity. The revelation leaves Yeon devastated and avoiding Yoonbi entirely. Reflecting on Yeon's distance, Yoonbi decides to confess the truth. She meets him and admits to having regained her memories long ago. Yeon, visibly hurt, asks her to confirm her identity. Her tearful reaction affirms his suspicions, leaving him deeply shaken. His emotions spill over as he questions her lies and motives. The confrontation escalates when Tae-gwang steps in to shield Yoonbi, pulling her away from Yeon. Refusing to back down, Yeon holds on, creating a tense standoff between the two boys. Tae-gwang urges Yoonbi to remain silent, but she insists on confessing to Yeon. Reluctantly, he lets her go, and she admits to Yeon that she is not Yoonbyul. Struggling to process, Yeon defers the conversation, but Yoonbi apologizes for the pain her deception caused. Overwhelmed, Yeon asks for time. The next day, Yoonbi notices Yeon's absence. Teacher Kim introduces the cheerful Teacher Young, receiving mixed student reactions. Meanwhile, So-young taunts Yoonbi about her impact on Yeon, but Yoonbi holds back her anger. At school, Minjun's mother confronts teachers over his alleged innocence in the laptop sabotage, threatening legal action. Minjun overhears. Elsewhere, Songju excitedly prepares for her audition, unaware of So-young's interference. Tae-gwang finds Yoonbi deep in thought and tries to lighten her mood with jokes, although her unease about her honesty with Yeon lingers. He teases her but shows genuine concern. Yeon visits Mi-kyung, who admits forcing Eunbi into Eunbyul's life was a mistake. She plans to move away for Eunbi's fresh start and asks Yeon to keep it a secret. Troubled, he agrees. Teacher Kim indirectly confronts Minjun about the sabotage. Minjun's veiled confession prompts advice to make amends before it's too late, striking a nerve. At her audition, Songju impresses judges, oblivious to So-young's scheming. Meanwhile, Tae-gwang observes So-young's unusually cheerful demeanor as Yoonbi declares her intent to confront her before leaving. Yeon, reflecting on Mi-kyung's request, skips rocks in solitude while Yoonbi holds his medal, contemplating her next steps. The next day, both head to Tongyong. At Yoonbyul's memorial, Yeon accepts her absence, overwhelmed by grief, as Yoonbi watches her siblings visit the site, adding to her emotional turmoil. Yeon observes, further piecing together her past. On the return trip, a young girl's kind gesture reminds Yeon of Yoonbyul comforting him at his mother's funeral. Later, he glimpses Yoonbi on a passing bus, their tearful gazes meeting but no words exchanged. At school, Teacher Kim informs Minjun's mother of his suspicions. She angrily demands her son stay silent to protect their reputation. That evening, Yeon reflects on his emptiness as his father offers him a drink to fill the void. Yeon declines. Yoonbi wakes up sick, with Mi-kyung caring for her despite protests. Determined, she heads to school, where Song-ju shares her audition success. Their strained relationship tempers the moment, and Song-ju cautiously asks what went wrong between them. Teacher Kim announces insufficient evidence to blame anyone for the sabotage, but warns against bullying. The class suspects So-young, but Minjun struggles with guilt as the real culprit. Teacher Kim sets a deadline for confession, intensifying Minjun's inner conflict. Noticing Yoonbi's pale face, Shijin takes her to the nurse's office. Yoonbi glances at Yeon, who avoids her, lost in music. Songju notices their growing distance. Concerned, Tae-gwang visits Yoonbi, staying nearby to nap. He sneaks a glance at her, quickly looking away in embarrassment. Later, Yeon silently checks on her, his visit observed by Tae-gwang. In class, Teacher Jung offers Yoonbi support, but turns cold and unsettling once she leaves. Outside, a car pulls up, and Soo-in's mother greets Teacher Jung, revealed as Soo-in's sister. Shijin complains to Eunbi about math problems, but Tae-gwang interrupts, whisking her away. In his car, he checks her fever and takes her to a rooftop. Recalling their first meeting, he reintroduces her as Lee Yoonbi. Meanwhile, Teacher Kim waits for the culprit in the counseling room. Hearing a knock, he finds no one, while below, Minjun sits by the wall, tormented by guilt. The next day, So-young confronts Yeon before his swim meet. He recalls Mi-kyung's story about Yoonbi's bullying and directly questions So-young. She responds cryptically, but he dismisses her with a cutting comment. At school, a post on the website exposes the Tae-gwang bullying case, naming So-young. Teacher Kim reacts with alarm as students scorn So-young. In the classroom, classmates openly label her a bully. Songju is devastated, while So-young trembles at the public humiliation. Tae-gwang shields Eunbi from the fallout, asking if she's behind the post. She denies it, but admits relief at the truth coming out. When he asks if she'll leave, she surprises him by saying she's happy here and he's part of it. Flustered but protective, he reminds her the fight isn't over. At his swim meet, Yeon receives a message from So-young threatening to reveal Yoonbi's identity. Ignoring the meet, he rushes out, gets hit by a car, and, despite injuries, forces himself to the school. In class, So-young confesses to being the Tae-gwang bully, locking eyes with Yoonbi. Smirking, she taunts the class, hinting at her victim's identity. As she's about to expose Yoonbi, Tae-gwang steps in, mocking So-young and urging Yoonbi to respond. Before she can, Yeon bursts in, declaring he'll explain. He recounts Yoonbi's bullying and attempted suicide, stunning the class. So-young falters under the scrutiny, and Tae-gwang corners her, asking who really died. Speechless, she loses the class's support. Strained, Yeon exits, but collapses outside. Yoonbi rushes to him. On the roof, Tae-gwang warns So-young that her schemes have failed and consequences await if she's tied to Eunbyul's death. At the hospital, doctors inform Yeon's father and the dean of the severity of his shoulder injury, estimating a year for recovery. Yeon apologizes to his father, but his dad reassures him, encouraging him to rest and move forward. Elsewhere, Minjun overhears his mother manipulating parents to join her tutoring group, while So-young's mother plans to quell the rumors herself. So-young feigns remorse, masking her true intent to retaliate. The next day, Yoonbi musters the courage to visit Yeon. Their conversation is tense, with Yeon rejecting her gratitude and asking her to leave. Tae-gwang arrives with food, but Yeon's frustration boils over and he snaps. Yoonbi calms the situation but declines Tae-gwang's offer to leave, insisting she must stay for Yeon. Later, Yeon's coach urges him to focus on recovery, but doubt consumes him, fearing his career is over. Overhearing this, Yoonbi is deeply hurt. When she offers to help him later, Yeon lashes out, knocking a water bottle away and angrily demanding she stay away and never call his name again. Yoonbi, crushed, collapses outside his room in tears. Tae-gwang finds her and silently sits beside her, offering his shoulder as she cries. The next morning, Min-jun skips school, leaving teacher Kim a message not to inform his mother. In class, Ki-tae and Tae-gwang briefly celebrate their fraudulent top grade on an English project, only for teacher An to expose their scam after teacher Young spots a watermark. Their deceit earns them a failing grade, to Ki-tae's dismay. In the teacher's office, teacher Young gets uncomfortably close to teacher Kim under the guise of needing help, but is interrupted by the dean. Soon after, teacher Kim finds Young Soo-in's workbook on his desk and confronts director Gong, accusing others of evading accountability for her death and warning about the corrosive effects of unresolved guilt. Meanwhile, Min-jun wanders aimlessly through the city, weighed down by guilt and pressure. At the hospital, Yi-an questions Yoonbi's motives, accusing her of pity and expressing confusion over her identity. Hurt but determined, Yoonbi vows to keep visiting, believing it will hasten his recovery. Outside his door, she tearfully admits her fear of losing him and explains her delay in revealing the truth. Yi-an listens silently. The next day, Yi-an returns to school and is warmly greeted by teacher Kim, whose earnest encouragement lightens the mood. Meanwhile, Min-jun confesses to skipping school to study at the library, feeling lost under the weight of his mother's expectations. Teacher Kim offers to mediate, but Min-jun remains resigned. Later, at home, Min-jun stares at a website for reporting illegal tutoring, contemplating his next move. So-young's mother demands Yoonbi's transfer from the school, portraying her daughter as a victim and insisting Yoonbi be removed for So-young's well-being. At lunch, Yi-an joins Song-ju, Shijin, and Yoonbi, with Tae-gwang following suit. A brief, playful truce between Yi-an and Tae-gwang lightens the tension. Detective Park delivers a report to director Gong revealing Go Eun-byul's presence during Soo-in's death, prompting further investigation. Teacher Jung, Soo-in's sister, seems ominously intent on resolving the matter. Director Gong orders Yoonbi's transfer, ignoring teacher Kim's protests. Tae-gwang shares a lighthearted moment with Yoonbi, but director Gong notices, recognizing Yoonbi as Go Eun-byul. That night, a mysterious figure visits Yoonbi's memorial vault. Her reflection confirms her identity. The real Go Eun-byul has returned. Yi-an sits by the pool, haunted by memories of his swimming glory. Longing for the water, he gazes with tear-filled eyes. Director Gong notices Tae-gwang's interest in Yoonbi and questions him. Tae-gwang sarcastically deflects, dismissing Yoonbi as just another classmate, temporarily satisfying his father's curiosity. Meanwhile, Mi-kyung confronts teacher Kim and the vice principal about Yoonbi's transfer. She quickly exposes the charges as pretext and threatens legal action over the school's negligence, silencing the vice principal. Troubled by the transfer, Tae-gwang tears down the notice while recalling his father's growing interest in Yoonbi. So-young watches smugly before taunting Yoonbi about Yi-an's injury. Yoonbi calmly rebukes her, stating that protecting others outweighs hatred. Mi-kyung, overhearing, suggests they discuss it at home. At the hospital, Yi-an's coach scolds him for refusing rehab, but Yi-an remains detached. Yoonbi attempts to approach him, but he ignores her. Later, Min-jun confesses to teacher Kim about sabotaging the laptops, owning up despite his fear of his mother's reaction. Teacher Kim announces the confession in class, rescinding project deductions. Min-jun publicly apologizes, earning forgiveness from classmates, much to So-young's frustration. Later, Min-jun recalls seeing Eun-byul flee the classroom the night before Soo-in's death, and shares this with Yoonbi. At home, Tae-gwang hints at the injustice of Yoonbi's transfer to his father, deepening director Gong's curiosity. Yi-an confronts Yoonbi outside his house, questioning her persistence. She urges him to seek treatment, but he dismisses her and retreats inside. Watching her leave from his window, his conflicted expression lingers. That night, Yoonbi confirms to Mi-kyung that So-young is the Tongyeong bully. Despite her mother's suggestion to transfer, Yoonbi resolves to stay and face her challenges. The next day, Min-jun's domineering mother storms into the teacher's room, accusing teacher Kim of coercing her son's confession. Teacher Kim calmly counters, urging her to reflect on the harm her control has caused. Minjun later admits to his father that he avoids going home, overwhelmed by his mother's expectations. His father comforts him, pleading against despair. Hearing this, his mother breaks down, finally realizing the weight of her ambitions on her son. Elsewhere, Teacher Young grieves quietly at Soo-in's desk, her sorrow turning to unsettling intensity as she watches Eunbi in the hallway. Later, Yeon, still avoiding rehab, brushes off Eunbi's heartfelt reminder of her own struggles and gratitude for life. He walks away, leaving her words unanswered. Eunbi receives a cryptic message summoning her to a classroom. Uneasy, she arrives to find Teacher Young, who accuses her of neglecting Soo-in and locks her inside to experience isolation. Trapped, Eunbi calls her mother, but the phone dies mid-conversation. Meanwhile, Tae-gwang uncovers documents in his father's office linking Eunbi to Soo-in's case, piecing together the mystery. Elsewhere, Eunbyul makes a cryptic call to Mi-kyung before slipping away in disguise. As Eunbi sinks into despair inside the locked room, Tae-gwang grows anxious over her silence. Just as Eunbi loses hope, the door suddenly slides open. Eunbi is rescued by Teacher Kim, who spots a fleeing figure in the shadows. Outside, Yeon arrives, worried. Kim entrusts Eunbi to him, asking him to take her home. Yeon gently comforts her as they walk, but Tae-gwang, waiting anxiously at her gate, scolds her for having her phone off. Yeon's calm words redirect his concern, and Tae-gwang takes Eunbi's bag, urging her inside. Left alone, the two boys confront each other, with Tae-gwang warning Yeon not to make her cry. The next day, Eunbi tells Teacher Kim about the mysterious text and the hooded figure. Kim reviews CCTV footage and recognizes the figure as Min Young, revealing her connection to Soo-in. Meanwhile, Eunbi, realizing Min Young's identity, confides in Tae-gwang on the rooftop. Tae-gwang reveals Soo-in's body was found in that very classroom and makes Eunbi promise to call him if anything strange happens again. Min Young's unsettling behavior toward Eunbi intensifies, leaving her rattled. Teacher Kim confronts Min Young over drinks, apologizing for his past failures, but begging her to stop harming the students. Though caught off guard, Min Young accuses him of abandoning Soo-in and leaves, conflicted. Tae-gwang presses his father about Eunbi's transfer, but Gong dismisses him. Frustrated, Tae-gwang vows to stop it himself. At school, Yeon's seriousness unsettles Eunbi when she teases him about her transfer. Meanwhile, So-young's parents argue over her own transfer, with her father insisting she face the consequences. Min Young later reveals to Eunbi that she is Soo-in's sister and accuses her of forgetting their shared past with Soo-in. Through flashbacks, Soo-in's loneliness and neglect before her death come to light, with Min Young vowing that no one will escape their guilt. Director Gong scrambles to suppress an online expose about Soo-in, but the story spreads, attracting reporters. Prosecutor Kang warns him to expedite So-young's demands, while Tae-gwang watches from a distance. That night, Mi-kyung offers comfort to Eunbi, apologizing for her burdens and suggesting they transfer. Eunbi tearfully thanks her, admitting her desire to live as herself. The next morning, Eunbi spends the day with Yeon, setting aside their tension. They laugh, ride a tandem bike, and visit Namsan Tower, where she gives him a swimming medal, encouraging him to rediscover his path. As they part, Yeon sends her a heartfelt text, bringing tears to her eyes. At his mother's wedding, Tae-gwang leaves a sharp note for Gong, accusing him of prioritizing reputation over justice. Their confrontation ends with Gong insisting Eunbi's transfer will proceed, but Tae-gwang counters bitterly, exposing his father's failures. That night, Tae-gwang confesses his feelings to Eunbi, embracing her in a moment of raw vulnerability before letting her go. The next day, at the disciplinary meeting, Teacher Kim defends Eunbi, but Mi-kyung interrupts, declaring they will leave Sekang voluntarily, silencing the room with her defiance. At home, Eunbi reflects on her sister's journal when the doorbell rings. Mi-kyung answers to find Eunbyul standing there in disguise. "Mom," she says, revealing her return. Eunbyul's return leaves Mi-kyung in tears. She scolds her daughter for disappearing, but soon embraces her. Overwhelmed with relief, Eunbi, stunned, drops her book before greeting her sister. Their reunion is emotional and awkward as Eunbi asks where Eunbyul has been. Eunbyul reveals she stayed at Hope Orphanage, tormented by guilt and trying to atone by taking Eunbi's place. Through a flashback, Eunbyul recalls secretly witnessing So-young's relentless bullying during the Tae-gwang trip. Ashamed of her inaction, she followed Eunbi to the bridge and dove in to save her after she jumped. At the hospital, hearing of Eunbi's amnesia, Eunbyul left her scarf behind, switching places to shield her. Back in the present, Eunbyul admits her mistakes and vows to confront them. The sisters find solace in their reunion, agreeing to face their challenges together. Eunbyul promises to help Eunbi live fully as herself, while Eunbi encourages her to return to school and confront her fears. At school, So-young's father meets director Gong, leveraging his political power over the school's Soo-in scandal. Tae-gwang, secretly photographing the exchange, uncovers the connection between So-young's father and the school's corruption. Meanwhile, Eunbyul's confident return unsettles So-young, who attempts to expose Eunbi's identity. Eunbyul deflects by asserting her identity as Go Eunbyul, turning the tables and accusing So-young of tormenting Eunbi. The class admires Eunbyul's strength as she refuses to sink to So-young's level. Tae-gwang grows suspicious of the new Eunbi and confronts her, realizing she is the real Eunbyul. Yi-an meets Eunbyul, but her odd behavior unsettles him. As she explains what happened in Tae-gwang, he grows frustrated, accusing her of ignoring his feelings and leaving him to grieve her presumed death. Her apology fails to mend the hurt, leaving their relationship strained. Later, Eunbyul confides in teacher Kim about her guilt and her intent to apologize to Soo-in properly. She shares how discovering Soo-in's body has haunted her and resolves to reveal the truth. Teacher Kim, moved, apologizes for his failures and promises to make amends. Gathering his courage, he heads to the police station to report what he knows about Soo-in's death. Meanwhile, Yi-an reflects on Eunbi's heartfelt confession and later speaks with Eunbyul. She informs him that Eunbi is in Tae-gwang deciding her next steps. Their conversation is interrupted by So-young, who sarcastically contrasts Eunbi's reserved demeanor with Eunbyul's confidence. Turning to Yi-an, So-young reveals that his injury stemmed from rushing to defend Eunbi after abandoning a critical swim meet. With a mocking smile, she asks the question he's avoided, "Who do you really like? Go Eunbyul or Lee Eunbi?" Eunbyul stiffens at Yi-an's words. Tentatively, she asks if he still thinks she's strong. He acknowledges her outer strength but says he can see the struggle within. She lowers her gaze, grateful for his understanding, but unable to let go of her remorse. At school, teacher Kim quietly packs his belongings after submitting his resignation. The students notice his somber mood and whispers spread about his departure. Minjun and Shijin exchange worried glances, realizing their beloved teacher may not return. Outside, Tae-gwang stands silently at the gate as police cars arrive. Director Gong is led away in handcuffs. Tae-gwang and his father briefly lock eyes, their strained relationship culminating in this moment. Yi-an, watching nearby, looks between Tae-gwang and the police car, puzzled by the unfolding events. At the police station, Director Gong confesses to obstructing justice in Soo-in's case. He admits to forging documents to protect the school's reputation and reveals that teacher Kim had persistently tried to expose the truth. Though his voice wavers, Gong declares himself solely responsible for the cover-up. Later, Eunbi leaves a box for Yi-an at the pool, but is caught by him. Flustered, she reclaims the box, and they sit awkwardly on separate benches. Yi-an shares that he started rehab, bringing visible relief to Eunbi. She beams, saying she knew he'd bounce back now that Eunbyul had returned, but Yi-an's expression betrays his emotions. When she hands him back the medal and asks if seeing her is easier now, he admits it was hard, but insists he never wanted her to leave. Relieved by his forgiveness, Eunbi promises not to avoid him anymore. At the bus stop, Eunbi Yunbi sees news of director Gong's arrest and calls Tae-gwang, whose brief response reveals he's fevered and unwell. Alarmed, she visits him in the hospital, where she finds him unconscious. Noticing his murmurs for his mother, she scrolls through his sparse contacts and decides to call her. Tae-gwang's mother arrives and sits by his bedside, reflecting on their strained relationship. She shares with Yunbi how the divorce and her absence changed him and expresses gratitude for her friendship. Before leaving, she gives Yunbi a small gift for him. When Tae-gwang wakes, Yunbi scolds him for not calling earlier. He retorts weakly, "You came anyway." She smiles, but when he questions her concern, knowing her feelings aren't mutual, she offers to leave. He shakes his head, grateful for her presence, and holds her hand as he drifts back to sleep. Yunbyul visits Soo-in's family, entering her room where Min-young recounts Soo-in's deep affection for their friendship. Overwhelmed by guilt, Yunbyul breaks down, apologizing for failing her. Min-young embraces her, acknowledging the burden they both carry. At home, Yeon contemplates two medals, Yunbi's modest gift and Yunbyul's winner's medal. Hanging them side by side, he reflects on their significance. Meanwhile, Tae-gwang convinces Eunbi to join him for a crab feast. Though she scolds him for his self-neglect, her concern softens when she realizes his loneliness. She gives him his mother's gift, a tie, which visibly disappoints him, though he hides it behind humor. As they walk home, Tae-gwang admits time feels slower when he's alone, but being with her makes it bearable. Standing close, he leans in and brushes a kiss against her cheek. Unnoticed, Yeon watches from a distance. The medal slips from his hand as his face reflects shock and hurt. Tae-gwang awkwardly suggests she hit him or leave. She chooses to head home, while Tae-gwang walks away, struggling to contain his elation. Yeon lingers, gripping the medal Yunbi had returned to him. The next morning, Yeon confronts Tae-gwang on the school roof, declaring his growing feelings for Yunbi. He asserts he doesn't care how long Tae-gwang has liked her, as he's ready to pursue her now. Tae-gwang calmly counters with his steadfast affection, intensifying the tension between them. Despite director Gong accepting responsibility for Soo-in's death, teacher Kim decides to resign, feeling unworthy of continuing. The vice principal respects his decision, and Min-jun shares the news with the class. At lunch, So-young endures veiled insults from her classmates. She flees to the bathroom and encounters Yun-byul, who advises her to reflect instead of lashing out. Furious, So-young breaks a mirror. Seeking solace, So-young asks her father to let her transfer schools, but he dismisses her plea, prioritizing his ambitions and telling her to dominate or fade into obscurity. In class, Min-jun announces teacher Kim's resignation. Ki-tae speculates it's connected to Soo-in's case, prompting Tae-gwang to confront Kim. On the rooftop, Kim shares his reasons for leaving, recounting his relationship with Tae-gwang's father and the failures he wishes to correct. Tae-gwang complains about being abandoned, and Kim reassures him to reach out anytime. Elsewhere, Yeon defends his father during a street altercation, while Tae-gwang hesitates at the police station before confronting his own father. Outside, Yeon sees Tae-gwang with Detective Park, realizing director Gong is Tae-gwang's father. Later, the two awkwardly share a meal with Yeon's father, who unknowingly encourages their friendship. As Yeon's father expresses gratitude for his son's loyalty, Tae-gwang silently envies their bond. Later, he changes his father's contact name to Father, a small but significant step. Rumors swirl about director Gong's son attending their school, pointing fingers at Tae-gwang. Calmly leaving amid the mockery, he is joined by Yeon. Teacher Kim shares his plans to rebuild himself and promises to return as a better teacher. As teacher Kim prepares to leave, his students cover his car with heartfelt notes of gratitude. Their cheers and pleas for his return move him to tears. Waving back, he leaves with a heavy heart but renewed purpose. Yeon fulfills a childhood promise by giving Yun-byul his gold medal. Using the moment to end his unrequited love, he declares they'll remain friends, sharing a bittersweet laugh. Meanwhile, Tae-gwang visits his father, wearing his mother's tie. Gong apologizes for his past mistakes, and Tae-gwang promises to visit again. Meanwhile, watching from afar, calls Yun-byul, taunting her with a video from Tong-yong and threatening to expose it. Alarmed, Yun-byul rushes to the school. At the podium, Yunbi nervously addresses the class. Mid-speech, Yun-byul bursts into the room, causing a stir as the twins stand side by side. So-young seizes the moment, triumphantly revealing her proof. Lee Yunbi from Tong-yong is alive. Yun-byul calmly tells Yunbi to say what she needs, then drags So-young outside. The class sits in stunned silence. silence, unsure of what's unfolding. Outside, Yunbyul confronts So Young about the video, suspecting it's from the Tae-gwang bullying incident. So Young smugly refuses to hand it over, claiming the drama isn't over. Yunbyul, unfazed, discreetly records their conversation as So Young unwittingly admits to her actions. Back in class, Yunbi confesses her true identity, apologizing for deceiving everyone. Though hurt, her friends listen as she explains her memory loss and her struggles to come clean. Meanwhile, Yunbyul corners So Young in the bathroom and plays back her confession. She warns So Young to stay quiet and disappear, leaving her shaken. Tae-gwang visits Yunbi, masking his sadness with humor. When he asks if his presence matters, her hesitation confirms her inability to reciprocate his feelings. Hurt, but unsurprised, he brushes it off, though her words linger. A surprising message from So Young beckons her to a final meeting. Meeting Yunbi, So Young bitterly admits she doesn't know how to stop hurting people and refuses to apologize, convinced it won't change anything. Yunbi calmly suggests that her survival might one day give So Young the chance to face her guilt. Though So Young seems ready to respond, she breaks down in silence. As Yunbi walks away, Yunbyul confronts Yunbi about her feelings for Yeon, assuring her that Yeon is just a friend and encouraging her to decide for herself. Yunbi meets Yeon to say goodbye, admitting her feelings but explaining she needs time to discover herself before pursuing love. Yeon promises to wait, asking her to return his medal when she's ready. 6 months later, Yunbi returns to Sekong High as Go Yunbi, embracing her new identity. Reuniting with Tae-gwang on the rooftop, she teases him before revealing her new name tag. They rekindle their friendship with laughter. Elsewhere, teacher Kim starts anew at a different school. Minjun explores new hobbies, and Songju and Shijin pursue their dreams. Yeon triumphantly returns to competitive swimming, while Tae-gwang enjoys a heartfelt reunion with his father. Yunbi reflects on the lessons of being 18, learning to dream, overcoming hardships, and cherishing growth. She exchanges playful banter with Yeon on the bus.